Question: what is the proper, acceptable way of getting rid of the anger that has built up in you? It just blows, and that would seem to be destructive. What is a good way to prevent that?
Good question. I run a lot. I run around Miles Square. Okay? But I'll tell you how it got to me. When my son was into drugs, and I was at a point where I was at my wit's end, I was about to have a nervous breakdown. Because all my life I had just been taught, all you got to do is try harder. Stuff those emotions and try harder, and you can work it out. You can figure a way out. And I figured if I could just talk to the kid again, I could talk some sense into him. And I was always doing this. I would think about it. I was obsessed on this. I wasn't going to let him go. And finally, I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, and finally, there was just no place else to go. I realized that whatever I did, he was going to do the opposite thing. I couldn't get the police to do it. I couldn't get the hospitals, the doctors to do it. I couldn't do it myself. And so as that began to happen to me, I began to come to the point where I was willing to admit that my method did not work, that control and power did not work, that there was no way I could control another life. There was no way I can save another life through my codependency. There was no way I could live another man's life, whether it was my son or somebody I loved with all my heart and soul, or somebody I didn't care about. There's no way that I can make somebody do what I know that they've got to do for the best of them. Do you understand? And I got to a point where I was so emotionally weak, so down, not sleeping, not working, that I got to a point physically where I was exhausted, and I allowed myself to cry. First time since like 12, and I cried, and it started to come up. Years and years of stuffing, years and years of being bad, years and years of being tough, years and years of pent-up frustration and anger and rage, and it started to come. And I cried and cried and cried. I could not believe it. I was just watching what was happening to me, and I let it go. Of course, do you think I could do that in front of anybody? No, not that code yet. I'm still bad. I can go in there and die, come out, but I got to be bad when I come out, right? And I came to the realization that I had to let go. So to me, it was cognitive and an emotional experience. So I cried until I realized what was right, that I had to let go, and I gave him back. I said, I cannot rescue anymore. I can't decide for you anymore. I can't protect you anymore. I'm worn out. You win. People, hear this. I let go. By letting go, I got control of my life. Does that sound like AA? When I let go, I took control back for my life. And as long as I was trying to control others, I was out of control. That's part of the myth of the dysfunction. Because when you're shamed, you must always be on guard, lest you be discovered, lest your shame be displayed. So you always got to be on guard. Don't talk. Don't tell secrets. Do you see the dysfunctional family? Don't do anything that's going to reveal this. Don't you ever argue in front of people. Always smile. All right. So the point is, how do you vent this? A lot of times it's done in therapy. For me, it was tears, a cognitive process also of letting go. And now when my son does this stuff, I see it, I observe it. I am amazed that I'm not hooked in emotionally anymore. I've overcome that. I've let go of it. And with my family, my mom and dad, I let go. And they do what they want to do. With my children, I let go. With you, I'm very, very hopeful that you will listen to this. This is so very important for you. I would have given anything I ever made to know this when I was a young man, so I wouldn't live 50 years like this. But it wasn't like that for me. I hope that you will not let your children be damaged like this through your dysfunction and through your desires to look good for the sake of the church or for the sake of the school or for the sake of the neighbors. That you'll put that child's interest first. That you will let your child see you cry. That you will let your child see mom and dad upset with each other and look at how mom and dad solve a problem. In a dysfunctional family, mom and dad often are shameless. They're perfect. They don't have any arguments. At least the city doesn't see them, right? So you can't let anybody see this. My son told me, he said, Dad, I thought you were perfect. I said, where on earth could you ever get an idea? That whenever something happens, I always cleaned it up. I always explained to him why I did such and such, and explained the mistake away. Do you see how dysfunctional that is? Can we admit our humanness, our frailties, our mistakes? What power it would be when a little boy came to Dad and he says, Daddy, the bully's beating me up and I'm scared to go to school. What power it would be when I say I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm afraid to go to school. The kid said if I didn't bring him money today, he'd beat me up. He took my lunch money. He got me down and took my lunch money 2 days in a row. Daddy, he's so big I can't get him off. He sits on me, I can't get him off. Do you know it'd be worth millions of dollars if that father would say, instead of go back and punch him in the mouth, you know, when I was little, I was scared so bad one time when the bully was chasing me. Dad, were you scared? Yeah, I was scared, and I cried when he caught me too. You cried, Dad? Yeah, son, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be afraid. And you learn to handle that. But it's normal to be afraid. I mean, nature put into us a fear sometimes in a logical situation that's fearful. Fear protects us. Our anger protects us, immobilizes us. When I'm taught in my family that it's not right to fear, I'm without a very important defense. In the war, you're supposed to be afraid. Otherwise, you'd stand up when the machine guns are going off. And you're supposed to be angry. Otherwise, you wouldn't fight this incest guy. You're supposed to have a sense of outrage. You're supposed to feel violated. Emotions are an important part of survival. And in the dysfunctional family, you're taught you're not supposed to feel. You're not supposed to think. You're not supposed to want unless we tell you. You want and believe and think what we tell you. That's really, really bad. How important it would be for a little boy to hear his dad say, I was scared to death, son. Yeah, Mom and I are having a hard time. We're having a hard time financially instead of pretending. You know, there are no secrets in families. Do you ever hear people say that? The kids sense it. They pick it up. Mom and Dad could smile. I knew they weren't getting along. I could tell by what we did we were having financial problems. When Mom picked us up and moved, and Dad didn't come, I'm not stupid. I can figure it out. Can you? When we see Dad? Well, I don't know. You don't know? No? Is that big time for a little kid? That's big time. But that hurts. And in order to stop hurting, I pick up my addictions. I start to focus on work, or I focus on sports, and I don't have to think about my hurt. I don't have to think about that. And so we start to addict. Well, you see, when I was relieving my anger and my anxiety, let's call it anxiety, okay? Whatever. When I was relieving my anxiety because of the frustrations I had, through work, I was trying to solve an internal problem with an external tool. You understand? Work and church and sex and drugs or alcohol are all external solutions to an internal problem. It ain't going to work. I can alleviate the anxiety for a little while, right? But what happens when the drug wears off? What happens when I come down to the ground? I still got the hurt. And the difference is a healthy way of healing and a sick way of compensating and burying the pain, medicating the pain with alcohol or work or church or sex or rage, some other way to focus off the real problem. I'm suggesting that crying was therapeutic and genuine for me. I wasn't addicted to crying, but crying worked for me. It worked, and I never cried so hard in all my life, nor since. I've tried a couple times because it really felt good, but I've never had that occasion. But you can't see me cry. I can't give that up yet, so I don't cry much in public. It's great to see a movie and allow yourself to cry, isn't it? You women get to cry. My sister fall down and skin her knee. I fall down off the same bike and skin my knee. My bruise is twice as big as hers, and I'm bawling and she's bawling. And they say, oh, you poor little thing. And I'm saying, look. They say, shut up, you weenie. You're a man. You're not supposed to hurt. Stop bleeding. Guys don't bleed. So, man, it doesn't hurt me. So men in America are taught you're not supposed to have feelings. You're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to be super producers. You're supposed to be killers. You're supposed to be aggressive. Those are the roles. And we try to be, and it's not natural. It's not healthy. I want to love, and I want to be loved. I want some emotions. I want to quit making 500 widgets a month more than anybody else and have some time with my wife. I want that. But my code says I've got to compete, and I've got to make more, and I've got to do better.
I'm not sure how to ask this question, but when you go back to the roles of the children, I'm feeling guilty that my children that I have an intelligent child, that I have a child that's an athlete, that I have not forced to be that way. Why am I feeling guilty because of it?
Well, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty, but I am trying to say that those roles can be exploited, and they can be part of a sick system. If you're saying, I'm so proud of you, you're so good, and you made a touchdown, and this, that, and the other, that's in behalf of the parent. And I don't think that's clean. And when the child says, gee, I'm doing well at school or something, you say, gee, that's great. How do you feel about it? And give some strokes, but also give strokes for other things. And give everybody strokes. Do you need a lot of strokes? But I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty. What I'm trying to say is that when you see a child getting all their strokes by being a heroine or by being a surrogate spouse, I want you to recognize the dysfunction. That you should not bring that child into the marital conflict. That child should not be going to law school because you didn't get to go. Like I say, one generation says, you don't have to do it. I had to take it and I didn't like it, so you don't have to do it, kids. The next generation that didn't have to take it said, hey, you kids need to take violin or need to take piano, right? And they have to take it and they hate it. And then the next generation, what? Man, I had to take piano when I was little, man. You guys don't have to take. Every other generation takes piano, okay? Do you think the relationship's more important than the piano? It really is. You can't make everybody do everything, so you got to pick and choose what your non-negotiables are. And allow the child to make a lot of those decisions and put it on them. That education is their responsibility. It's not yours. Do I have to go to school? Well, that's not between you and me. That's between you and the law. You're only 2, so you don't have to go yet. But when you have to be 5 and 10, you need to go. Or work it out with the school. That's between you and them. Now it's your responsibility for your education. Okay. You cannot not communicate. This is what's happening all the time. You're communicating all the time. 93% of what we communicate is nonverbal. It's through these innuendos and the values that I picked up from my father.